Welcome back to the Bob Fu Report, where we give you stories from the front lines in China regarding human rights, religious freedom, and rule of law. My name is Jonathan Dingler, filling in once again for Bob this week. Thank you so much for continuing to support this program wherever you watch it, whether that's God's Learning Channel, YouTube, wherever. If you want more regular updates for the fight for freedom in China, tune into our website, ChinaAid.org. To start our program today, I want to report on the Smart Religion app. This is a ChinaAid story that was actually picked up by several news outlets, including Fox News, Radio Free Asia, and even some international sources. So, what is this Smart Religion app? It originated in Henan province in China. According to the Smart Religion app requirements formulated by the provincial authorities, it is an app that religious believers have to use to participate in religious activities. So the Religious Affairs Department in Henan province basically created an app where they wanted religious believers to use this app in order to take place in state-sanctioned, government-sanctioned churches, like Three Self churches, things like that. So a function of this app is to use it to reserve their space online for different church services. Now, this can be in a Protestant church, a mass, going to a mosque, or a Buddhist temple. Now, remember, there's 5 state-sanctioned religions in China, one of them being the Three Self Church. This is the Protestant church. And then, of course, the Catholic Association, which is kind of the CCP's version of the Catholic Church. There's also a Muslim state religion and a Buddhist Tao religion. So basically what this app is, one of the functions of this app, and this is important to notice, is that it's only just one function. One function of the app is that faithful believers have to log into this app and basically say, I'm going to be at this church at this time. As you can tell, this is an egregious infringement on religious freedom in China. However, like I said, it is important to know, though, that this app is not being widely used in China just yet. If you ask somebody in China about this app, they'd be confused. Nobody's forced to use it just yet. There's no legal basis for the app. Now, before this, the COVID-19 app, which we'll get to later, was a mandated app that everybody had to have on their phone. You had to download this app and basically provide proof of where you've been so that the Chinese government knows whether or not they want to throw you in quarantine, quote unquote. We'll get back to that here in a few minutes. So Christians in Henan, where this app is active and being used, say that this has already reduced the number of believers attending church. Now, a little bit of background on Henan province. It's been known as the Jerusalem of China for its origin of China house church revival movements, where nearly all major house church networks in China were birthed in Henan. It's also one of the provinces where Christians experienced the heaviest persecution under the CCP. So this is according to the Ethnic and Religious Affairs of China. There are several projects on this app, all for the foundation of a religious affairs management improvement project. So essentially, people in Henan province, they see that there's a huge problem of Christianity, that they just have so many Christians, probably the most Christians per capita of all the other provinces in China. And they're saying, okay, we've got to regulate this. We've got to manage this. And so in order to do that, they basically created this app. This was part of their Religious Affairs Management Improvement Project. Registering to go to a church is not the only function of the Smart Religion app. Some of our ChinaAid sources say that the app utilizes technologies like big data, artificial intelligence, electronic maps, the mobile web, and a 720-degree VR panoramic map. So the precise positioning of video surveillances at venues, so these are, at a Three Self church, they will have surveillance cameras. These are all put in certain spaces so that they can constantly monitor who is in the area. They use a multi-dimensional data analysis to improve religious affairs management. That's kind of the stated goal, is that if they have this app and the different cameras that are around these religious venues, these state-sanctioned venues, then they'll be able to monitor who goes in and at what time for whatever purpose. Now, one quick question that a lot of people have been asking is, what does this app like? Does this mean that you have to register multiple times? Is it just the one time? Is it being enforced? And that's one thing that we have to go ahead and clearly state, that ChinaAid, this is such a young project in terms of it being implemented, that we're not really sure what the precedent is going to be like going forward. Essentially, whatever local authorities in Henan province, if they decide that they want to be very strict with this, and they're going to say, hey, show me your online registration before you enter this church, that's one thing. They may also go different ways with that. There's just no way of knowing. There's no legal basis for this app quite yet. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But it's still a very harrowing sign for Christians in Henan province. And all of these other factors have not even been identified yet, how they're going to be used. It's evidently clear that this is not for religious management, whatever that means. The CCP claims that they're using it for religious management. This is similar to how the CCP used the COVID Health app, as I mentioned earlier. We now know that the COVID Health app was used for basically trying to get spyware on every phone in China so that you could figure out where political dissidents are. You could try to figure out what their movements were going to be. For those of you who don't know, the COVID Health app was an app that you would have on your phone. It's a little QR code. You would scan it, and when you scanned it, it would tell you if you had been to an area that had a lot of COVID cases, or if maybe you had been exposed to a COVID case. All of those things. It was a color code system. And so if you got yellow or red, that means you need to go into quarantine right away. Now, that doesn't sound so bad on the surface. Maybe, like if you're a well-meaning person that doesn't want to give people COVID, that might make sense. But in reality, they used it for much more than that. There was a human rights lawyer that Bob talked about on the program that was going to represent a Christian pastor. And on his way out of the station, he had previously had a green health code, but when he arrived to represent this house church pastor, all of a sudden he had a yellow health code. And now he has to go into a hotel room and wait there for 2 weeks. So this is not uncharacteristic of the Chinese Communist Party to implement an app that Chinese Christians, Chinese people have to use. And now, since they've gotten rid of the COVID Health app after the Zero COVID debacle, now they may be eventually planning to use this Smart Religion app to manage the Christian population in Henan. Maybe at first, maybe that's their guinea pig group, and then maybe they move on to other provinces. The international community should urge the CCP to stop this new wave of persecution and sanction those facilitators such as officials and companies who enable religious persecution at the digital level. Before I go on to the next story, we just have to take a moment, okay, to recognize ChinaAid sources and journalists on the ground which bring us stories like this. This isn't by no means me trying to toot the horn of ChinaAid. I just want you guys to take a moment and sincerely thank these people, because these people are putting their lives on the line really for this kind of work. You may remember what I said earlier. This app is not used widespread. It's just used in one province, and even at that, it's only used in a few provinces. They're just testing the implementation right now as far as we can tell. The only reason that we're even aware of this tactic and kind of have an inclination that this might turn into a new trend in the future is because of the fearless work of our trained reporters and knowledgeable experts, not only on the ground in China, but also throughout our expansive network. So thank you to all of those who are named and unnamed. Your sacrifice does not go unnoticed. God bless you. Thank you so much for your work. And if you want to know, if you want to be in tune with all these stories that are coming out of China that maybe mainstream media doesn't have quite yet, or things like that. You can always tune into ChinaAid.org, log on, and check out our stories. We update them pretty regularly there. Now, for the rest of this news broadcast, I do have some very good news for our supporters this week. We actually just realized that we just found out that 2 pastors in China were released from prison. 2 of them are somewhat, the first one is very notable. He's been very notable for about 15 years. And the other one we've talked about on the program quite a bit. Both of them are, interestingly, from predominantly Muslim areas in China. The first story is that Alim Yamiti is a Uyghur house church pastor. He was actually released after serving a 15-year sentence. 15 years, one of the largest sentences definitely that we've covered here on the program. Alim was initially arrested in January 2008 for inciting separatism and unlawfully providing state secrets. They ended up just charging him with sharing state secrets. Essentially what happened is that Alim had 2 separate trials, and in the first trial, they couldn't even, it's a rigged judicial system, and they couldn't even convict him of the charges that they gave him. Isn't that interesting? They had to charge him a separate time in a separate trial, I think about 6 months later. And then they had to actually drop one of their false charges against him just to get him in prison. So many mental gymnastics going on in the Chinese Communist Party just to put these people away. But one of the reasons why Alim's case is so special was because Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region are typically a Muslim ethnic group. The fact that Alim was a Christian, not only that, a house church pastor, one of the first ones that we know of in the area, might have put a big target on his back. This is because the CCP has kind of this flawed logic that, okay, so Uyghurs are Muslim and Tibetans are Tibetan Buddhists. So therefore, if somebody is not if they're not what they're supposed to be, then you should target them even more. This is, of course, just a horrible practice, and that's why a lot of Uyghur Christians, it's hard to find them for many reasons, but this is probably one of those reasons. And of course, being a Christian is not the only reason that Alim was targeted. It was also probably, obviously, because he's Uyghur. This was, when he was arrested, was during a particularly contentious time between the CCP and Uyghurs, but from what we can tell, it was before the concentration camps really started to come into full force. Now, as I just kind of alluded to, we do not have a lot of information because of the nature of where Alim lives, in Xinjiang, which is also known as East Turkestan. This is, like I said, the province where an estimated 1 to 2 million Uyghurs have been kept in concentration camps, facing forced sterilization, also forced labor, torture, re-education, basically brainwashing. There's been reports of these Uyghur Muslims being taken in and being forced to defecate on the Quran and recant their faith. Horrible, horrible things. And even though we've gotten a lot of reports from this area, this is a very sensitive area. It's where the CCP has a real tight rein on the Uyghur population and really anyone that lives there, because they don't want any more information to get out that's already been released. So due to the sensitivity of the region, ChinaAid sources have been unable to determine Alim's current condition. We just know that he is with his family and that the Chinese Communist Party did release him. Other than that, we don't know, if his health is in danger. For example, we don't know if he's being monitored in his house or if he's been able to leave his house. That's a very common practice for Uyghurs that have been released, that they can't leave their own homes. They can't do really anything. And instead of being given an ankle bracelet, they're giving a cell phone from the government that basically can track them wherever they go. And things like that, or a watch, like Joseph Ovalbek Turtakun. He was a Kyrgyz Christian who was in the Uyghur concentration camp. So he's not Uyghur, he's Kyrgyz. He was in the concentration camps and he was released, but unfortunately, he had to wear a watch. You can actually find that on our ChinaAid YouTube channel. back from Earth Summit 2022. He gave a very extensive testimony on the technology used in these camps. It's just mind-blowing. Anyway, so all that to say is that we don't know Aleem's exact condition. So please continue to pray for Aleem and his family. We don't really know what's going on, but as soon as we do, you'll be the first to know here on the Bob Fu Report and, of course, on our website. On the other hand, a second pastor, as I mentioned, was also released from a predominantly Muslim area. Geng Zijin is a pastor of Church of the Rock. It's also called Panchi Church in Ningxia province. So Ningxia province, according to some of our experts here, is the second highest population of Muslims in China, most per capita, I believe. Some of you may remember that Geng is a pastor that we've covered here on the program before. He was arrested previously for organizing illegal gatherings and sentenced to 15 months in prison. So initially, Geng Zijin and his small congregation, they were raided 3 times by authorities. All 3 times the authorities came in, closed whatever venue they were using, and told them to go away. It's a lot of old people, unfortunately, and these are some faithful folks that are wanting to learn more about the Bible. Like I said, this is in Ningxia province. It's not a very, it's been actually quite some time for us here at ChinaAid to hear of a case coming out of this region. And Geng Zijin is one of the first ones that we've heard of in quite some time. So it's somewhat sad because the only case we're hearing about is persecution, but it's somewhat encouraging knowing that the gospel is kind of widespread all over China. So this case really began in December of 2021 when the police began raiding Panchi Church, Church of the Rock. And in December of 2021, Geng Zijin was given a 2-week administrative detention, and he went through that detention, and in January of 2022, about 2 weeks after he was released, he was arrested once again, and then they formally charged him in early January of 2022. You're also going to remember that Geng Zijin actually had a long time before his trial as well. They ended up having a 7-hour trial secretly. He was in his prison cell, basically attending his trial virtually because of COVID. And we didn't hear a lot about his imprisonment. Like I said, this is not a heavily Christian area, so the network there is not super reliable. But we did end up hearing that his best friend, his childhood best friend, was also arrested on a totally separate thing, not religious related at all. He was arrested, and he found Geng Zijin, and he reported to Geng's family and his congregation about his condition in prison. Pastor Geng was apparently treated very well in prison, even though he is a much older man. He was not given difficult work to do. Even though he had COVID, he was treated very well in the prison. All of the prisoners and guards would actually ask him for life and spiritual advice. So very encouraging reports about Pastor Geng, but because of his release, we're very excited to share that with you. I want to show you this very emotional video when Geng's congregation and his family greeted him after his release. Go ahead and check out this video.
你的小爸爸。
那我等会儿到餐厅再给你打。谢谢。好了，你坐。我到餐厅再给你打。行。
上这个大车，到时给你换衣服。
咱们先吃点走吧。
先让他换衣服。
没事，不用换，我穿上就行。
At the end of the video, it seems apparent that Geng was anxious to leave as soon as possible. I can't say that I blame him. Now, the following, I'm about to read just very briefly how Ying is the wife of Geng Zijin. She sent out a open letter to the Capital C Global Church just to let them know her thanks from the bottom of her heart. So what I'm about to read is a quote. I'll let you know when I'm done reading it. Brother Geng, was sent out at around 9 a.m. today. Church brothers and sisters from many different places came and waited at the gate of the detention center. We embraced each other with tears in our eyes, greeted each other in the Lord, and were deeply inspired by the Lord's Spirit. Thanks be to God for this. His servant has returned in glory, full of grace, full of blessings. Who can stop the glory of God? Today, believers and unbelievers together picked up Preacher Gang and brought him home. Thank you all for your constant care and concern. May God remember you and keep you. Please continue to pray for God's blessing on each other. End quote. That is a message, while it is probably easily understood as a message to Christians in China who had been praying for Gang, all of you who support ChinaAid, support this ministry, and maybe even prayed for Preacher Gang Zijin, that message is to you. So thank you for your constant care and concern. Thank you for tuning into this broadcast, because as Bob says, when the global church, when the Chinese persecuted church is suffering, we suffer with them. We're one body. Just as it says in Hebrews 13, when one part of the body is in prison, we're all in prison. So continue to pray for Gang Zijin and Church of the Rock in Ningxia province. As I said, they were shut down 3 different times by authorities. So they don't even have a place to meet. So pray for them. God is going to use them in amazing ways. That's what we hope. In other news, another somewhat good piece of news is that Zhang Haitao, he's a civil rights activist in Xinjiang, actually. His sister was finally able to visit him in prison for the first time in nearly 5 years. Public security officers arrested Zhang Haitao in Xinjiang's capital, Urumqi, on June 26, 2015. They convicted him of inciting subversion of state power and providing intelligence overseas because he criticized the Chinese government's treatment of Uyghurs. He was sentenced to 19 years in prison. Tragic. That's even longer than Aleem. This maybe gives you an inclination about Zhang Haitao. I don't believe he's Uyghur. I believe he's Han Chinese. But the Xinjiang region is just an area where the Communist Party just keeps a completely tight lip. So back to the story. Zhang Haitao's sister and his family have tried many times to visit him since April 2018, but with no success. Now, again, he was initially arrested in 2015. They were able to visit with him and write letters, and it was a very consistent relationship until April of 2018. That was the last time anybody had seen him face to face. Unfortunately, there's not many details regarding their visit, and it's reasonable to speculate that Zhang Haitao's sister did not want to jeopardize future visits, so that's why she didn't really talk about what they said. We know it was about half an hour long. We know that it was a video conference, so they didn't even see each other face to face, but she at least got to see her brother. But Li Aiji is the wife of Zhang Haitao. She wrote a response to hearing about this video conference. She actually lives in the United States, which we'll get back to here in a minute. She wrote this: I am extremely grateful for his older sister. She was exceedingly determined this time. She's tried many times before, as I mentioned earlier. The older sister lived in Urumqi, Xinjiang for a month, and she actually worked hard to negotiate with various departments. According to Li, the sister said that she would stay in Xinjiang or East Turkestan until she saw her brother. Li Aiji, who now lives in the United States, told Zhang's sister to relay a message to her husband. Haitao, take care of your health and keep holding on to hope in your heart. Everything is fine with your son and I. Do not worry. I will try my best to raise our child. Please, rest assured. Keep looking up to God and keep praying. Write a letter to your family every month to let everyone know that you are safe. Now, there are still 12 years left in Zhang Haitao's sentence. Please continue to pray for him and his family. Finally, just real quick, want to show you a unfortunate video here. The Early Rain Covenant Church was raided by police on March 12th. This is an ongoing escalation of persecution against Early Rain Covenant Church. This raid specifically was actually preceded by about 10 days of consistent persecution, harassment, forced evictions. We are still seeing reports pile in. It's quite staggering, actually, every day. Early Rain Covenant Church leaders, different congregants, they're being sent to administrative detention, like Shu Qiang and Preacher Ding. Both of these people have already been put into a detention center, and many families actually are being forcibly evicted from their houses in Chengdu City. For those who do not know, Early Rain Covenant Church is the church in Sichuan province, which is quite popular for some of us here in the West because the Pastor Wang Yi, wrote a collective joint statement, which was sent to, it was an open letter to it was an open declaration of faith that over 400 house church pastors and leaders signed. He was given a 9-year sentence. And Early Rain Covenant Church has a lot of political activists, Christian activists, and so they're usually pretty consistently targeted by the government. But ever since Pastor Wang Yi's arrest in 2018, they've just been consistently persecuted and harassed, summoned by the police, tortured, lots of detentions, home surveillances, and even in spite of all of those horrible things, they have seen an uptick in those things recently. So be praying for them. Pray for the leadership. Elder Li Yingqiang, he and his wife had to move to a nearby city because they were evicted as well. For just a couple of days, even 3 days, I believe, they were separated from their children. So please, please, please keep these people in your prayers. Keep Zhang Haitao in your prayers. Keep Pastor Gang Zijin, Elim. Keep them all in your prayers. And we will see you guys next time on the Bob Fu Report. And as we leave, I just want to encourage everybody that's watching the broadcast today to go to ChinaAid.org, but also go to ChinaAid.org/adopt Mayflower. On this URL, you'll actually be able to help us, ChinaAid, help the Mayflower Church that's in Thailand. As many of you know, the Mayflower Church, they are stuck in Thailand waiting for a human rights, waiting for the UN refugee status. And we need your help because we can't pay for their food and water and all of these things on our own. We need your help to support the Mayflower Church financially. So you can go to ChinaAid.org/adopt Mayflower, or you can go to ChinaAid.org/Mayflower for more information. Now, again, thank you so much. Wherever you're tuning in from, I hope you have a beautiful and blessed day. Thank you.